The Mission Impossible series has become one of the most iconic action franchises of the past few decades, following the relentless and daring Ethan Hunt as he tackles impossible missions with jaw-dropping stunts and high-stakes espionage. What started as a relatively straightforward spy thriller, the franchise has evolved into a rollercoaster of action, spectacle, and over-the-top stunts, each film building on the last. In this ranking, I'll be diving into all the movies, looking at everything from the story and character development to the insane action sequences and direction. And with the release of The Final Reckoning, which concludes a specific storyline to the franchise, I believe this is a perfect time to give you my full opinion and analysis of the entirety of Mission Impossible. I'll be ranking these movies from worst to best, but keep in mind that doesn't mean I necessarily hate the ones that are placed in the worst category. It just means that there are specific elements within the film that I believe could have been executed better, or they weren't as interesting to me as some of the others. Let's start with my least favorite of the franchise, Mission Impossible 3, released in 2006. Now, I know this is a hot take, but please let me explain. The movie has a strong opening with the main protagonist, Ethan Hunt, and his wife, who are held hostage by the main antagonist, Owen Davian. Owen Davian is about to shoot Ethan's wife in front of him as a way to ensure the authenticity of a powerful weapon that we later learn is an early prototype of the entity called the Rabbit's Foot. This entire scene also plays out near the end and serves as a strong hook for the beginning. There are definitely a few good moments in Mission Impossible 3, especially when the IMF catches Davian during the midpoint, but overall, a lot of the scenes are just not that interesting to me. Not to mention, the antagonist Davian, who has so much potential, has barely any screen time and no specific motivation to really grab me. The ending is extremely anticlimactic when it seems like Davian has the upper hand throughout his hand-to-hand combat fight with Ethan, and then immediately gets hit by a truck soon after. I mean, hey, at least the next scene is cool, when Ethan's wife Julia successfully kills the bad guys while Ethan is nearly dead, and she hasn't used a gun before, and she's successful, and she hasn't used a gun before. Well, nobody expects these films to be realistic, right? Mission Impossible 5, Rogue Nation, released in 2015, is next in the ranking. I basically have a similar issue with this movie in terms of the antagonist who has little to no screen time. In fact, I'm fairly certain that when he's reintroduced in the sixth one, he's around a lot more. Also, the ending of Mission Impossible 5 Rogue Nation felt a bit underwhelming too when the antagonist, Solomon Lane, decides he has had enough and reveals himself to Ethan for the very first time, only to be tricked and captured by the IMF almost right away. Like Davian's character, Solomon Lane shows a lot of potential in his character, with the slight difference of having a set goal. He is revealed to be a former MI6 agent who went rogue and became the leader of his own powerful terrorist organization composed of former government agents called the Syndicate. His goal is to reshape the world through chaos and suffering. Come on, how much more grand and ambitious can someone be? Yeah, there are definitely more ambitious ones throughout the franchise, but when it comes to raising the stakes, this one does a pretty solid job. This is also the movie where Ilsa Faust is introduced, playing a double agent of sorts between the Syndicate and MI6, whose sole purpose is to capture Solomon Lane. I really like her character because, on the surface, she comes across as this badass spy working directly under Lane. But beneath that tough exterior, she's far more complex and deeply afraid, yet forced by MI6 to stay close to Lane in order to gradually expose his identity. Yes, she can be frustrating at times, constantly switching sides and betraying Ethan throughout this film and the sixth, but that moral ambiguity is part of what makes her so compelling. I think what makes Rogue Nation less interesting for me compared to the others is that it pulls its punches just when things should escalate. Solomon Lane is a promising villain with a grand vision, but he has limited screen time and is ultimately captured in an underwhelming finale. The film feels more focused on setting up future storylines like Ilsa Faust's shifting loyalties and the rise of the Syndicate, rather than delivering a fully satisfying arc on its own. Compared to the high-energy spectacle of Ghost Protocol or the relentless intensity of Fallout, Rogue Nation feels more restrained and ultimately less impactful. I think you're all gonna hate me for ranking this so low, but the original Mission Impossible, released in 1996, comes next. I swear, I love this movie for several reasons, such as its powerful opening that sets the tone for the entire series and the climactic ending that kept me on the edge of my seat until the very last moment. While I understand that its slower pacing reflects the era it was made in, I couldn't help feeling that it dragged at times when I watched it. Plus, I'm not too sure how well some of it would hold up if I did rewatch it. There were moments that already felt a little dated or overly complex the first time around. One thing that really confused me was the relationship between Ethan Hunt and Claire. I couldn't tell if they were supposed to have real chemistry or if it was all just part of some manipulative spy dynamic. Their interactions felt kind of cold and ambiguous, and I never fully understood what I was supposed to feel about them. It left me more puzzled than invested. Still, I really respect how bold and stylish this film is, and I totally see why it kicks off such a long-running franchise. The first mission instantly pulls you into this world of deception and high stakes, and that opening sequence alone is enough to make it memorable. The tension, the masks, the iconic score, it all just works. Even if I didn't connect with every character or fully grasp all the plot twists, I can't deny how influential this movie is. It lays the foundation for everything that follows, and you can feel the franchise finding its identity right there. It might not be my favorite, but it's an essential piece of the puzzle. Where do I even begin with Mission Impossible 2, released in 2000? For starters, this movie is considered the least popular in the franchise due to the fact that critics believe it has a weak plot, a forgettable villain, and a focus on style over substance. While I agree that the chemistry between Ethan Hunt and that one girl, I don't care to remember her name, is lackluster, I heavily disagree with the other points. Unlike many of the other antagonists, yes, I love talking about the antagonists, this one, Sean Ambrose, seems to have the most screen time, a unique goal, and is a perfect match to pair up against Ethan. His goal is simple, yet effective: to become incredibly wealthy by causing a global health crisis and profiting from the resulting demand for the cure. And let's not forget that epic bike chase scene, followed by a fistfight on the beach to wrap up the intense action sequences. Personally, I believe that while Mission Impossible 2 may not win over every critic, it offers a bold, stylish take on the franchise that shouldn't be so easily dismissed. With a memorable villain, high-stakes tension, and some of the most visually striking action sequences in the series, it brings its own unique flavor to the Mission Impossible legacy, even if the romantic subplot falls flat. In fact, what makes Mission Impossible 2 stand out is exactly what people often criticize it for: its over-the-top style. But that's also what gives it personality. John Woo's direction is full of dramatic slow-mo, flying doves, and intense action that feels more like a stylized dance than a typical fight scene. Sure, it's not the most emotionally deep or tightly written movie in the series, but it owns its identity. And honestly, sometimes it's just fun to watch a movie that goes all in on being cool. It may not be everyone's favorite, but it definitely deserves more love than it gets. Real quick, if you're enjoying this video and want to support the channel in a bigger way, check out my Patreon. It's a great way to help me keep creating. You'll get some cool extras like behind-the-scenes stuff, early access, and more. Links in the description if you want to take a look. Thanks so much. I feel like Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, released in 2011, delivers on nearly everything I praised, except for the antagonist Kurt Hendricks. His whole character is that he is a Swedish-born Russian nuclear strategist who aims to trigger a nuclear conflict between Russia and the United States to force humanity's unification. Sounds interesting, right? Well, just like the third and fifth movies, Hendricks is barely in it, and that's what makes it so frustrating. On paper, Hendricks is actually pretty fascinating. A brilliant nuclear strategist, Swedish-born, operating in Russia with this cold, terrifying belief that the only way to unite humanity is through nuclear war. That's huge. That's the kind of villain who should be keeping Ethan Hunt up at night, but instead, Hendricks barely gets any screen time, and when he does show up, he's just there. Quiet, distant, and kind of forgettable. It's not that the idea behind him is bad, it's actually great. It's that the movie never gives him room to breathe. We don't get to know who he is beyond the mission file. We're told he's dangerous, brilliant, and extreme, but we hardly see it. He doesn't have a strong presence like, say, Davian in Mission Impossible 3, who, even with limited time, managed to feel genuinely threatening. Hendricks, on the other hand, feels more like a device to keep the plot moving than a real person Ethan has to go up against. And it stands out even more, because the rest of Ghost Protocol is so good. The action is top tier, the Dubai Burj Khalifa sequence is unforgettable, the pacing is tight, the team dynamic really clicks, and Brad Bird brings this incredible sense of style to it all. The whole thing has this slick, high-stakes energy that just works. But the villain? He's basically a ghost, which ironically fits the title, but not in a good way. It's a pattern the franchise struggles with. Cool concepts for villains, but not enough depth or presence to make them land. Hendricks could have been a standout and someone with a warped but thought-provoking ideology, someone who challenged Ethan not just physically, but morally. Instead, he's just another doomsday guy with a countdown. In the end, Ghost Protocol remains one of the most entertaining entries in the Mission Impossible series, stylish, fast-paced, and full of jaw-dropping moments. But its biggest weakness is one the franchise keeps repeating: villains who are more concept than character. Hendricks had the potential to elevate the story into something deeper, something that wrestled with big, uncomfortable ideas about order, chaos, and sacrifice. Instead, he's left underdeveloped, a missed opportunity in an otherwise explosive film. And while the action may be unforgettable, the antagonist sadly isn't, leaving us with yet another reminder that spectacle alone doesn't make a villain stick. We're now down to my top 3 favorite Mission Impossible movies, beginning with Fallout, released in 2018. Now, this is where the action sequences are taken to a whole other level. From the halo jump to the bathroom fight to that insane helicopter chase in the finale, this movie just does not let up. Every set piece is not only beautifully shot, but also packed with real tension, and you can feel the weight and danger in every stunt, especially knowing that Tom Cruise is actually doing most of them himself. What really sets Fallout apart for me, though, is how it ties together so much of the emotional and narrative weight from previous films. It's the first time the consequences of Ethan's choices really catch up to him, and I loved how it explored his character beyond just being the guy who pulls off impossible feats. His loyalty, his guilt, his need to save everyone, it all comes to the surface here. Add in the return of familiar faces like Ilsa Faust and Solomon Lane, and it feels like the most personal, high-stakes chapter in the series. It's thrilling, emotional, and surprisingly reflective, all while still being ridiculously entertaining. Speaking of Lane, he's just a fascinating antagonist, bringing a whole character dimension to his character. What I like about him is that he's not your typical mustache-twirling villain. There's something eerie and calculating about him, and you get the sense that he genuinely believes in his cause, which makes him even more unsettling. And then there's August Walker, who adds a whole other layer of tension. He's this blunt force instrument in contrast to Ethan's precision, and the way that dynamic plays out is incredibly satisfying. Having two antagonists with such different energies and different relationships to Ethan makes the whole movie feel like it's constantly shifting under your feet. It's a relentless game of trust, betrayal, and survival, and I couldn't get enough of it. By now, it's probably obvious what my next two favorites are in the franchise. Dead Reckoning, released in 2023, comes next, delivering some of the best action sequences I've ever seen in any film, period. From the breathtaking motorcycle jump off a cliff to the intense train sequence that feels like a roller coaster about to fly off the tracks, every moment is executed with jaw-dropping precision. It's not just the scale of the stunts, it's how they're shot, how they're paced, and how they keep escalating without ever feeling overdone. You're not just watching action, you're experiencing it. What impressed me even more was how Dead Reckoning managed to balance all that spectacle with a story that feels timely and high stakes. The threat of AI and digital manipulation adds a new kind of tension, one that's scarily relevant. And once again, Ethan is caught between saving the world and protecting the people he cares about, which keeps the emotional core strong even amid all the chaos. It's a near-perfect blend of thrilling entertainment and thought-provoking themes, leaving me completely exhilarated. The introduction of the antagonist, Gabriel, brings a whole new layer of danger to the series. He's not just a physical threat, though he's definitely capable in that sense, but more importantly, he's tied to Ethan's past in a way that no villain before him has been. That connection adds a sense of dread that lingers throughout the film. Gabriel is calm, methodical, almost prophetic in a way he speaks about fate and choice, and it's unsettling. You can tell he truly believes in the inevitability of his mission, which makes him incredibly dangerous. His introduction feels like a shift, not just a villain for this film, but someone who could redefine Ethan's story moving forward. Overall, Dead Reckoning doesn't just raise the stakes, it reshapes them, setting the stage for a finale that feels more personal, more urgent, and more impossible than ever before. Look, I get that it might sound like recency bias, given how recently The Final Reckoning came out and was released this year in 2025, but honestly, it's hard to deny how perfectly it brings the entire franchise full circle. It's not just a finale, it's a culmination. Every thread, every relationship, every impossible choice Ethan Hunt has faced over the years feels like it's been leading to this moment. The emotional payoff is huge, especially for longtime fans who follow these characters through every twist, betrayal, and death-defying mission. What I loved most was how it didn't just rely on spectacle, though the action is still absolutely top tier, it leaned into the emotional weight of the story. You can feel the toll the job has taken on Ethan, and how much he's willing to sacrifice not just for the mission, but for the people he loves. It's intense, reflective, and surprisingly intimate at times. And the way it pays tribute to the legacy of the series while pushing the characters into bold new territory, that's what makes it truly unforgettable. The scenes with the flashbacks were especially powerful. They weren't just there for nostalgia, they served a real purpose, connecting Ethan's past decisions to the present stakes in a way that felt earned. Moments from earlier films, whether it was his bond with Julia, the betrayals he's survived, or the faces he's lost along the way, are woven in through quick flashes or subtle dialogue, reminding us just how much he's endured. And when familiar characters reappear, it feels like a reward. They're not just cameos, they have something to say, something to do, and their presence adds real weight to the story. The callbacks and references are done with so much care. They don't feel like fan service, they feel like closure. Whether it's a quiet nod to the Langley heist, a line of dialogue that echoes something said years ago, or a character returning at just the right moment, it all reinforces how The Final Reckoning isn't just another mission, it's the sum of all of them. And then there's the final scene on the plane with Gabriel. What an unforgettable way to bring everything to a head. It's not just another fight or showdown, it's a confrontation loaded with meaning. Gabriel, ever composed and chilling, finally lets the cracks show as he realizes Ethan is no longer playing by anyone's rules, not even the ones that have governed his own moral code for years. The confined, claustrophobic setting of the plane adds so much tension, and the way the scene flips between physical struggle and philosophical conflict makes it feel like the entire series distilled into one final moment. When Ethan finally gains the upper hand, it's not about revenge, it's about resolve, and about putting an end to the ghost that has haunted him for so long. As the plane descends and the dust settles, there's this quiet finality. Ethan isn't just completing a mission, he's closing a chapter of his life. The film ends not with a bang, but with the kind of silence that feels earned, like a breath finally released. After all the chaos, sacrifice, and impossible choices, the final reckoning gives Ethan, and even the audience, something rare in this franchise: peace. And honestly, it's the perfect way to say goodbye. Looking back at the entire Mission Impossible franchise, it's honestly amazing how consistently thrilling, inventive, and emotionally resonant these films have become. What started as a stylish, twisty spy thriller in the 90s has evolved into one of the most ambitious action franchises of all time, pushing the limits of practical stunts, storytelling, and character development with each new entry. Whether it's the quiet tension of the original, the emotional weight of Fallout, or the sheer spectacle of Dead Reckoning, each film brings something unique to the table. Ranking them wasn't easy, because even the lower entries are still wildly entertaining. But more than anything, the series proves that blockbuster filmmaking doesn't have to sacrifice intelligence or heart for action. Ethan Hunt might be known for doing the impossible, but what's truly impressive is how this franchise keeps topping itself without ever losing its core. Thank you so much for watching. This video took a lot of time to make, so I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And please make sure to turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. More quality videos like this one coming soon. Once again, I really appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.